So if you're somebody that consumes a lot of content and wants to start creating content, this may be the most important video that you've seen all year, because I remember for years before I uploaded my first YouTube video, I wanted to start creating content. I knew that it could change my life and all the benefits that it could give me, but I was plagued by fear and I was plagued by inaction. I remember worrying that the content I was going to make wouldn't be good enough. I was worried that nobody would listen to me. What did I have to say? And I kept obsessing over the questions like, what niche should I choose? What gear should I make? What video should I make? All of those sorts of things. And it stopped me from doing anything. But what ended up happening was I joined a community. I've talked about this a couple times before, but the community was led by a YouTuber called Sunny T. He was incredibly different from me.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast for Marketers.
But that community created the perfect breeding grounds for action. So if you're somebody that consumes content and wants to start creating content, by the end of this video, you will have an exact roadmap to create your first piece of content. And by the end of this week, you will have posted your first piece of content. Because what you have to realize is that yes, the content you create now won't be good enough. But the way you make it good enough isn't by obsessing over that question, it's by acting. Imagine you were going to go to the gym. No matter if you do a perfect bicep curl, not that much change is going to be made. What you need to do is multiple bicep curls. The way you make content that's good enough is by creating lots of bad content.
You view it as a dirty tap. When you switch a dirty tap on, it's going to flow shit water out for a substantial amount of time, and then clean water is going to start flowing, and now and then you'll get a bit of shit, but as long as it gets out of you, it's fine. So with songs, you're going to write shit songs at the beginning.
And if you're obsessing over the question, what niche should I pick, what gear should I choose, what you need to understand is that you're focusing on steps 2 to steps 100 when you need to be focusing on steps 1. Because in reality, you can't focus on steps 2 and 3 and 4 until you get to the step before. The way you should do it is go from step 1, then think about step 2, then think about step 3, and only think about one step ahead of you. If you have impostor syndrome, you're worrying why people will listen to you. What you have to understand is that you actually are an imposter. Everyone is an imposter before they act.
When you do ambitious and important work, you are far beyond your capabilities. So by definition, you are an imposter. If you only did things that you were ready to do in your career, you would end up doing nothing.
Do you think Elon Musk was capable of running a multi-billion-dollar company before he started? When he started, he was an imposter. When I created my first YouTube video, I was an imposter. And I remember the very first YouTube video that I created. As soon as I understood that action was more important than anything, what I did was I got an article that I liked and I literally read it word for word using a phone with a bed that wasn't made behind me. I'm not recommending that. I'll give you a plan that I'll recommend so that you can create your first piece of content by the end of the week. But what you have to understand is you've had enough time to think and obsess. Now it is simply time to act. So here's the very specific challenge. If you're watching this video, then I challenge you to create your first piece of content by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. You have until the end of this week to create your first piece of content. If you're watching this video on a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday, then that deadline is in a week's time. At the end of the video, I'll show you how you can declare a public declaration so you can get public accountability to increase the likelihood of this happening. The last video I created, I recommended that content creators started viewing themselves as synthesizers. And there's 3 different parts to becoming a synthesizer. They consume content and experience the world. They curate content and curate the parts of the world that stood out most to them, and then they create content. But what you have to understand is that you've done enough consuming. And the beautiful thing about curation is you have years worth of curation that you can draw from, so you don't need to do that anymore. All you need to focus on is creating. I'd recommend you create content in the place that you consume the most. So if you spend most of your time on Twitter, your goal is by the end of this week to create a Twitter thread. If you consume most of your content on YouTube, your goal by the end of this week is to create a YouTube video. If you consume podcasts, your goal is to create a podcast. The type of content that I would recommend you make first is social hacking content. You see, when you're in the very early stages, it's difficult to build momentum. The algorithms aren't on your side. But what's easier to do is to get somebody on your side. With the social hacking technique, all you have to do is get one content creator on your side. Ideally one content creator with an audience bigger than you. By getting them on your side, there's a chance they'll share it with your audience, which means very quickly you can start to build momentum, and if you start to see real tangible results, it's easier to keep going. So, look back at your content creation history and pick a creator whose content you really love. Then you can do one of two things with that piece of content. You can either summarize it. The second thing you can do is add a little bit of yourself into their content. If their content has impacted you, you may have a story to tell about their content. You may share a live epiphany that you had whilst reading your content. And both of those things is how you can take other people's content, someone's content who has a larger audience than you, add a bit of yourself, add tons of value to their audience, and there's a chance that they'll share it with their audience. There's also a chance that they won't, and that's okay. But this is a really great piece to start, because what you have to understand is that all content you create will come from the content that you consume. Creating from scratch doesn't happen. It's a myth. We think of creativity as a lightning bolt that comes and strikes you out of nowhere, and you have this new and unique and original insight. That doesn't happen. What happens is that the insights you have come from the content you've consumed and the life experiences that you've had. So this is a very good way to cut the BS and say, I've consumed this, and this is what I'm creating as a result of what I've consumed. I can show you tons of different examples that people have used this technique and have rapidly grown their social media following. I remember when I joined Twitter, I had 0 followers, and this tweet that I created got 2 million impressions because the creator I was creating it about shared my content, and that got exposed to their audience. There's loads of people that have done this. On YouTube, I recommend this video. It's great. He went into Eric Weinstein's content, basically summarized it, and made a YouTube video about it. And to get specific, if you're going to be making a YouTube video, just do a talking head. Just use the phone that you're using. My first video was recorded on a phone. This video is recorded on a phone. You don't need any fancy gear. And just talk about the ideas of your favorite creator. If they've written stuff, then pop it up on screen with little things that pop up, like I do in this Naval video, which is a great example of this. I consumed loads of Naval's content. I turned it into a tweet storm where I added my personal story. Then I turned it into a YouTube video where I summarized his content, and it did really, really well. If you're worried about what title do I make and what thumbnail do I make, it literally doesn't matter. The important thing now is that you start. Because as soon as you start, everything changes. Because the question you go from asking is, how do I start, to how do I make this better? And that shift sounds very simple, but that shift will stop you overthinking and really help you take action and improve. Once you've done this, tweet at me and I will add you to an ongoing list, a thread of a bunch of other people that have created their first piece of content. I mean, look at all these other people that have started taking action. You can do it. It's completely possible. All you need is a hand, some fingers, a phone, the internet, and some thoughts. All of which you have. There's no reason that you can't do this. And if you're having thoughts and fears and anxieties that are plaguing you, what you need to do is you need to journal about them. Because a problem defined is a problem half solved. And instead of overthinking them, put them down on paper where you can inspect them and analyze them. Once you've clearly identified in a single sentence what the fear or anxiety that you're having that's stopping you from taking action, what you do is you respond to that sentence as if you were giving advice to a friend, as if you were advising a friend that came to you with that exact sentence. What I also recommend is that you make a public declaration. Beneath this video, make a comment saying, I will create a thread, I will create a YouTube video, I will create a podcast, whatever, by the end of this week. If you're already in the Synthesizer School, leave that below. What I also recommend is you go and direct message at least 1 or 2 other people that have made that public declaration and hold them accountable. Create accountability partners. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to join the Synthesizer School as well. I really believe that this world will be a lot better if there are more people synthesizing content. I really believe that there is a massive problem where all of the wisdom out there is disjointed, and creating content like the content I've just recommended you make condenses that content, condenses the wisdom, makes it less fragmented, makes it easier for people to find, which overall will make the world an incredible place. So I sincerely hope that you act, and if you do, congratulations. I'll talk to you in the next one.